The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, commonly known as the United Kingdom, UK, or Britain, M, is a country in northwestern Europe, off the coast of the continental mainland. It comprises England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, N, with a population of over 69 million in 2024. The UK includes the island of Great Britain, the northeastern part of the island of Ireland, and most of the smaller islands within the British Isles, covering 94,354 square miles or 244,376 square kilometers, F. It shares a land border with the Republic of Ireland and is otherwise surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea, the English Channel, the Celtic Sea, and the Irish Sea, while maintaining sovereignty over the British overseas territories. The capital and largest city of both England and the UK is London. Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast are the national capitals of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Britain has been inhabited since the Neolithic era. In AD 43, the Roman conquest of Britain began. The Roman departure was followed by Anglo-Saxon settlement. In 1066, the Normans conquered England. With the end of the Wars of the Roses, the Kingdom of England began to flourish, resulting by the 16th century in the annexation of Wales and the establishment of the British Empire. Over the 17th century, the role of the British monarchy was reduced, particularly as a result of the English Civil War. In 1707, the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland united under the Treaty of Union to create the Kingdom of Great Britain. In the Georgian era, the office of Prime Minister became established. The Acts of Union 1800 incorporated the Kingdom of Ireland to create the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland in 1801. Most of Ireland seceded from the UK in 1922 as the Irish Free State, and the Royal and Parliamentary Titles Act 1927 created the present United Kingdom. The UK became the first industrialized country and was the world's foremost power for the majority of the 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly during the Pax Britannica between 1815 and 1914. The British Empire was the leading economic power for most of the 19th century, a position supported by its agricultural prosperity, its role as a dominant trading nation, a massive industrial capacity, significant technological achievements, and the rise of 19th century London as the world's principal financial center. At its height in the 1920s, the empire encompassed almost a quarter of the world's landmass and population, and was the largest empire in history. However, its involvement in the First World War and the Second World War damaged Britain's economic power, and a global wave of decolonization led to the independence of most British colonies. The UK is a constitutional monarchy and parliamentary democracy, with three distinct jurisdictions: England and Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have their own governments and parliaments which control various devolved matters. A developed country with an advanced economy, the UK ranks amongst the largest economies by nominal GDP and is one of the world's largest exporters and importers. As a nuclear state with one of the highest defense budgets, the UK maintains one of the strongest militaries in Europe. Its soft power influence can be observed in the legal and political systems of many of its former colonies, and British culture remains globally influential, particularly in language, literature, music, and sport. A great power, the UK is part of numerous international organizations and forums.
Etymology and terminology. The Acts of Union, 1707, declared that the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland were united into one kingdom by the name of Great Britain. The term United Kingdom has occasionally been used for the former Kingdom of Great Britain, although its official name from 1707 to 1800 was simply Great Britain. The Acts of Union 1800 formed the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Following the partition of Ireland and the independence of the Irish Free State in 1922, which left Northern Ireland as the only part of the island of Ireland within the United Kingdom, the name was changed in 1927 to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Although the United Kingdom is a sovereign country, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are widely referred to as countries. The UK Prime Minister's website has used the phrase "countries within a country" to describe it. Some statistical summaries, such as those for the 12 NUTS 1 regions, refer to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as regions. Northern Ireland is also referred to as a province. With regard to Northern Ireland, the descriptive name used can be controversial, with the choice often revealing one's political preferences. The term Great Britain conventionally refers to the island of Great Britain, or politically to England, Scotland, and Wales in combination. It is sometimes used as a loose synonym for the United Kingdom as a whole. The word England is occasionally used incorrectly to refer to the United Kingdom as a whole, a mistake principally made by people from outside the UK. The term Britain is used as a synonym for Great Britain, but also sometimes for the United Kingdom. Usage is mixed. The UK Government Style Guide prefers the term UK rather than Britain or British, except when referring to embassies, while other government documents acknowledge that both terms refer to the United Kingdom and that elsewhere British government is used at least as frequently as United Kingdom government. The UK Permanent Committee on Geographical Names recognizes United Kingdom, UK, and UK as shortened and abbreviated geopolitical terms for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in its toponymic guidelines. It does not list Britain, but notes that it is only the one specific nominal term, Great Britain, which invariably excludes Northern Ireland. The BBC historically preferred to use Britain as shorthand only for Great Britain, though the present style guide does not take a position except that Great Britain excludes Northern Ireland. The adjective British is commonly used to refer to matters relating to the United Kingdom and is used in law to refer to United Kingdom citizenship and nationality. People of the United Kingdom use several different terms to describe their national identity and may identify themselves as being British, English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, or as having a combination of different national identities.
History prior to the Treaty of Union. Main articles: History of England, History of Wales, History of Scotland, and History of Ireland. Further information: Kingdom of England and Kingdom of Scotland. Settlement by Cro-Magnons of what was to become the United Kingdom occurred in waves beginning by about 30,000 years ago. The island has been continuously inhabited only since the last retreat of ice around 11,500 years ago. By the end of the region's prehistoric period, the population is thought to have belonged largely to a culture termed Insular Celtic, comprising Brittonic Britain and Gaelic Ireland. The Roman conquest, beginning in AD 43 and the 400-year rule of southern Britain, was followed by an invasion by Germanic Anglo-Saxon settlers, reducing the Brittonic area mainly to what was to become Wales, Cornwall, and, until the latter stages of the Anglo-Saxon settlement, the Hen Ogledd, northern England, and parts of southern Scotland. Most of the region settled by the Anglo-Saxons became unified as the Kingdom of England in the 10th century. Gaelic speakers in northwest Britain, with connections to the northeast of Ireland and traditionally supposed to have migrated from there in the 5th century, united with the Picts to create the Kingdom of Scotland in the 9th century. In 1066, the Normans invaded England from northern France.
After conquering England, they seized large parts of Wales, conquered much of Ireland, and were invited to settle in Scotland, bringing to each country feudalism on the Northern French model and Norman French culture. The Anglo-Norman ruling class greatly influenced but eventually assimilated with the local cultures. Subsequent medieval English kings completed the conquest of Wales and tried unsuccessfully to annex Scotland. Asserting its independence in the 1320 Declaration of Arbroath, Scotland maintained its independence thereafter, albeit in near constant conflict with England. In 1215, Magna Carta was the first document to state that no government was above the law and that citizens have rights protecting them. The English monarchs, through inheritance of substantial territories in France and claims to the French crown, were also heavily involved in conflicts in France, most notably the 100 Years' War, while the kings of Scots were in an alliance with the French during this period. Early modern Britain saw religious conflict resulting from the Reformation and the introduction of Protestant state churches in each country. The English Reformation ushered in political, constitutional, social, and cultural change in the 16th century and established the Church of England. It defined a national identity for England and slowly but profoundly changed people's religious beliefs. Wales was fully incorporated into the Kingdom of England, and Ireland was constituted as a kingdom in personal union with the English crown. In what was to become Northern Ireland, the lands of the independent Catholic Gaelic nobility were confiscated and given to Protestant settlers from England and Scotland. In 1603, the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland were united in a personal union when James VI of Scotland inherited the crowns of England and Ireland and moved his court from Edinburgh to London. Each country, nevertheless, remained a separate political entity and retained its separate political, legal, and religious institutions. In the mid-17th century, all three kingdoms were involved in a series of connected wars, including the English Civil War, which led to the temporary overthrow of the monarchy, with the execution of King Charles I and the establishment of the short-lived unitary republic of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Although the monarchy was restored, the interregnum, along with the Glorious Revolution of 1688 in England and Claim of Right Act 1689 in Scotland, ensured that, unlike much of the rest of Europe, royal absolutism would not prevail, and a professed Catholic could never accede to the throne. The British Constitution would develop on the basis of constitutional monarchy and the parliamentary system. With the founding of the Royal Society in 1660, science was greatly encouraged. During this period, particularly in England, the development of naval power and the interest in voyages of discovery led to the acquisition and settlement of overseas colonies, particularly in North America and the Caribbean. Though previous attempts at uniting the two kingdoms within Great Britain in 1606, 1667, and 1689 had proved unsuccessful, the attempt initiated in 1705 led to the Treaty of Union of 1706 being agreed and ratified by both parliaments. United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. In 1800, the parliaments of Great Britain and Ireland each passed an Act of Union, uniting the two kingdoms and creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland on 1 January 1801. After the defeat of France at the end of the French Revolutionary Wars and Napoleonic Wars, 1792 to 1815, the United Kingdom emerged as the principal naval and imperial power, with London the largest city in the world from about 1830. Unchallenged at sea, British dominance was later described as the Pax Britannica, a period of relative peace amongst the great powers, 1815 to 1914, during which the British Empire became the global hegemon and adopted the role of global policeman. From 1853 to 1856, Britain took part in the Crimean War, allied with the Ottoman Empire against Tsarist Russia. Following the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British government led by Lord Palmerston assumed direct rule over India. Alongside the formal control it exerted over its own colonies, British dominance of much of world trade meant that it effectively controlled the economies of regions such as East Asia and Latin America. Throughout the Victorian era, 1837 to 1901, political attitudes favored free trade and laissez-faire policies. Beginning with the Great Reform Act of 1832, Parliament gradually widened the voting franchise, with the 1884 Reform Act, championed by William Gladstone, granting suffrage to a majority of males for the first time. The British population increased at a dramatic rate, accompanied by rapid urbanization, causing significant social and economic stresses. By the late 19th century, the Conservative Party under Benjamin Disraeli and Lord Salisbury initiated a period of imperial expansion in Africa, maintained a policy of splendid isolation in Europe, and attempted to contain the influence of the Russian Empire in Afghanistan and Persia, in what came to be known as the Great Game. During this time, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand were granted self-governing dominion status. At the turn of the century, British industrial dominance became challenged by the German Empire and the United States. The Edwardian era, 1901 to 1910, included social reform and home rule for Ireland become important domestic issues, while the Labour Party emerged from an alliance of trade unions and small socialist groups in 1900, and suffragettes campaigned for women's right to vote.
World Wars and partition of Ireland. Britain was one of the principal allies that defeated the Central Powers in the First World War, 1914 to 1918. Alongside their French, Russian, and after 1917 American counterparts, British armed forces were engaged across much of the British Empire and in several regions of Europe, particularly on the Western Front. The high fatalities of trench warfare caused the loss of much of the generation of men, with lasting social effects in the nation and a great disruption in the social order. Britain had suffered 2.5 million casualties and finished the war with a huge national debt. The consequences of the war persuaded the government to expand the right to vote in national and local elections to all adult men and most adult women, with the Representation of the People Act, 1918. After the war, Britain became a permanent member of the Executive Council of the League of Nations and received a mandate over a number of former German and Ottoman colonies. Under the leadership of David Lloyd George, the British Empire reached its greatest extent, covering a fifth of the world's land surface and a quarter of its population. By the mid-1920s, most of the British population could listen to BBC radio programs. Experimental television broadcasts began in 1929, and the first scheduled BBC television service commenced in 1936. The rise of Irish nationalism and disputes within Ireland over the terms of Irish Home Rule led eventually to the partition of the island in 1921. A period of conflict in what is now Northern Ireland occurred from June 1920 until June 1922. The Irish Free State became independent, initially with Dominion status in 1922 and unambiguously independent in 1931. Northern Ireland remained part of the United Kingdom. The 1928 Equal Franchise Act gave women electoral equality with men in national elections. Strikes in the mid-1920s culminated in the General Strike of 1926. Britain had still not recovered from the effects of the First World War when the Great Depression, 1929 to 1932, led to considerable unemployment and hardship in the old industrial areas, as well as political and social unrest with rising membership in communist and socialist parties. A coalition government was formed in 1931. Nonetheless, Britain was described as a very wealthy country, formidable in arms, ruthless in pursuit of its interests, and sitting at the heart of a global production system. After Nazi Germany invaded Poland in 1939, Britain entered the Second World War. Despite the defeat of its European allies in the first year, Britain and its empire continued the war against Germany. In 1940, the Royal Air Force defeated the German Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain. Urban areas suffered heavy bombing during the Blitz. The Grand Alliance of Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union formed in 1941, leading the Allies against the Axis powers. There were eventual hard-fought victories in the Battle of the Atlantic, the North Africa Campaign, and the Italian Campaign. British forces played important roles in the Normandy landings of 1944 and the liberation of Europe. The British Army led the Burma Campaign against Japan, and the British Pacific Fleet fought Japan at sea. British scientists contributed to the Manhattan Project, whose task was to build a nuclear weapon. Post-war 20th century. The UK was one of the big three powers, with the US and the Soviet Union, who met to plan the post-war world. It drafted the Declaration by United Nations with the United States and became one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. It worked closely with the United States to establish the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and NATO. The war left the UK severely weakened and financially dependent on the American Marshall Plan, but it was spared the total war that devastated Eastern Europe. In the immediate post-war years, the Labour government under Clement Attlee initiated a radical program of reforms which significantly affected British society in the following decades. Major industries and public utilities were nationalized, a welfare state was established, and a comprehensive publicly funded healthcare system, the National Health Service, was created. The rise of nationalism in the colonies coincided with Britain's much diminished economic position after its involvement in the First World War and the Second World War, so that a policy of decolonization was inevitable. Independence was granted to India and Pakistan in 1947. Over the next 3 decades, most colonies of the British Empire gained their independence, and many became members of the Commonwealth of Nations. The UK was the 3rd country to develop a nuclear weapons arsenal, with its first atomic bomb test, Operation Hurricane, in 1952. But the post-war limitations of Britain's international role were illustrated by the Suez Crisis of 1956. The international spread of the English language, the world's most widely spoken language and 3rd most spoken native language, ensured the continuing international influence of its literature and culture. As a result of a shortage of workers in the 1950s and 1960s, the government encouraged immigration from Commonwealth countries. In the following decades, the UK became a more multiracial and multicultural society. Despite rising living standards in the late 1950s and 1960s, the UK's economic performance was less successful than many of its main competitors, such as France, West Germany, and Japan. The UK was the first democratic nation to lower its voting age to 18 in 1969. In the decades-long process of European integration, the UK was a founding member of the Western European Union, established with the London and Paris conferences in 1954. In 1960, the UK was one of the 7 founding members of the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, but in 1973 it left to join the European communities. In a 1975 referendum, 67% voted to stay in it. When the EC became the European Union, EU, in 1992, the UK was one of the 12 founding member states. From the late 60s, Northern Ireland experienced communal and paramilitary violence, sometimes affecting other parts of the UK, known as the Troubles. It is usually considered to have ended with the 1998 Belfast Good Friday Agreement. After a period of widespread economic slowdown and industrial strife in the 1970s, the Conservative government of the 1980s, led by Margaret Thatcher, initiated a radical policy of monetarism, deregulation, particularly of the financial sector, for example, the Big Bang in 1986, and labor markets, the sale of state-owned companies, privatization, and the withdrawal of subsidies to others. In 1982, Argentina invaded the British territories of South Georgia and Falkland Islands, leading to the 10-week Falkland War, in which Argentine forces were defeated. The inhabitants of the islands strongly favor British sovereignty, expressed in a 2013 referendum. Around the end of the 20th century, there were major changes to the governance of the UK, with the establishment of devolved administrations for Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The statutory incorporation followed acceptance of the European Convention on Human Rights. The UK remained a great power with global diplomatic and military influence and a leading role in the United Nations and NATO.
21st century, the UK broadly supported the United States' approach to the War on Terror in the early 21st century. British troops fought in the war in Afghanistan, but controversy surrounded Britain's military deployment in Iraq, which saw the largest protest in British history in opposition to the government led by Tony Blair. The Great Recession, 2007 to 2010, severely affected the British economy and was followed by a period of weak growth and stagnation. The Cameron-Clegg coalition government of 2010 introduced austerity measures intended to tackle the substantial public deficits. A referendum on Scottish independence in 2014 resulted in the Scottish electorate voting by 55.3% to 44.7% to remain part of the United Kingdom. In 2016, 51.9% of voters in the UK voted to leave the European Union. The UK left the EU in 2020. On May 1, 2021, the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement came into force, which is a free trade agreement between the UK and the EU. The COVID-19 pandemic had a severe impact on the British economy, caused major disruptions to education, and had far-reaching impacts on society and politics in 2020 and 2021. The UK was the first country in the world to use an approved COVID-19 vaccine, developing its own vaccine, which allowed the UK's vaccine rollout to be amongst the fastest in the world. Geography. The total area of the United Kingdom is approximately 94,354 square miles, or 244,376 square kilometers, with a land area of 93,727 square miles, or 242,741 square kilometers. It occupies the major part of the British Isles and includes the island of Great Britain, the northeastern 1/6 of the island of Ireland, and some smaller surrounding islands, meaning it comprises England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Geographically, the United Kingdom lies between the North Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea, with the southeast coast coming within 22 miles or 35 kilometers from the coast of northern France, from which it is separated by the English Channel. The nearby island polities of the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey are crown dependencies in union with the British monarch but do not strictly form part of the United Kingdom or any of its 3 jurisdictions or 4 countries, although the British government retains responsibility for their external affairs. The Isle of Man lies roughly midway between Great Britain and the island of Ireland in the Irish Sea, while the Channel Islands lie just off the northern French coast. The Royal Greenwich Observatory in London was chosen as the defining point of the prime meridian at the International Meridian Conference in 1884. The UK lies between latitudes 49 and 61 degrees N and longitudes 9 and 2 east. Northern Ireland shares a 310-mile or 499-mile land boundary with the Republic of Ireland and has a 404-mile or 650-mile coastline. The length of coastline of Great Britain plus its principal islands is about 19,491 miles or 31,368 kilometers long, with the coastline of the main island, Great Britain, being 11,073 miles, or 17,820 kilometers of that, though measurements can vary greatly due to the coastline paradox. It is connected to continental Europe by the Channel Tunnel, which at 31 miles, or 24 miles underwater, is the longest underwater tunnel in the world. The UK contains 4 terrestrial ecoregions: Celtic broadleaf forests, English lowlands beech forests, North Atlantic moist mixed forests, and Caledonian conifer forests. The area of woodland in the UK was estimated to be 3.25 million hectares in 2023, which represents 13% of the UK's land area. Climate. Most of the United Kingdom has a temperate climate with generally cool temperatures and plentiful rainfall all year round. The temperature varies with the seasons, seldom dropping below 0 degrees Celsius or rising above 30 degrees Celsius. Some parts away from the coast of upland England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and most of Scotland experience a subpolar oceanic climate. Higher elevations in Scotland experience a continental subarctic climate, and the mountains experience a tundra climate. The prevailing wind is from the southwest and bears frequent spells of mild and wet weather from the Atlantic Ocean, although the eastern parts are mostly sheltered from this wind. Since the majority of the rain falls over the western regions, the eastern parts are the driest. Atlantic currents warmed by the Gulf Stream bring mild winters, especially in the west, where winters are wet and even more so over high ground. Heavy snowfall can occur in winter and early spring on high ground and occasionally settles to great depths away from the hills. The average total annual sunshine in the United Kingdom was 1,339.7 hours between 1971 and 2000, which is just under the 30% of the maximum possible. The hours of sunshine vary from 1,200 to about 1,580 hours per year. Since 1996, the UK has been receiving above the 1981 to 2010 average hours of sunshine. Climate change has a serious impact on the country. A third of food price rise in 2023 was attributed to climate change. In 2024, the United Kingdom ranked 5th out of 180 countries in the Environmental Performance Index. A law has been passed that the UK greenhouse gas emissions will be net zero by 2050.
Topography. England accounts for 53% of the UK, covering 50,350 square miles, or 130,395 kilometers squared. Most of the country consists of lowland terrain, with upland and mountainous terrain northwest of the Tees X-line, which roughly divides the UK into lowland and upland areas. Lowland areas include Cornwall, the New Forest, the South Downs, and the Norfolk Broads. Upland areas include the Lake District, the Pennines, the Yorkshire Dales, Exmoor, and Dartmoor. The main rivers and estuaries are the Thames, Severn, and the Humber. Scotland accounts for 32% of the UK, covering 30,410 square miles or 78,772 kilometers squared. This includes nearly 800 islands, notably the Hebrides, Orkney Islands, and Shetland Islands. Scotland is the most mountainous constituent country of the UK. The Highlands to the north and west are the more rugged region containing the majority of Scotland's mountainous land, including the Cairngorms, Loch Lomond, and the Trossachs and Ben Nevis, which, at 1,345 meters, or 4,413 feet, is the highest point in the British Isles. Wales accounts for less than 9% of the UK, covering 8,020 square miles, or 20,779 kilometers squared. It is mostly mountainous, though South Wales is less mountainous than North and Mid Wales. The highest mountains in Wales are in Snowdonia and include Snowdon, Welsh Wyddfa, which at 1,085 meters, or 3,560 feet, is the highest peak in Wales. Wales has over 1,680 miles, or 2,704 kilometers of coastline, including the Pembrokeshire coast. Several islands lie off the Welsh mainland, the largest of which is Anglesey, Ynys Môn. Northern Ireland, separated from Great Britain by the Irish Sea and North Channel, has an area of 5,470 square miles, or 14,160 kilometers squared, and is mostly hilly. It includes Lough Neagh,
which at 150 square miles or 388 kilometers squared is the largest lake in the British Isles by area, Lough Erne, which has over 150 islands, and the Giant's Causeway, which is listed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. The highest peak in Northern Ireland is Slieve Donard in the Mourne Mountains at 852 meters or 2,795 feet. Politics. The UK is a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy operating under the Westminster system, otherwise known as a democratic parliamentary monarchy. It is a centralized, unitary state wherein the Parliament of the United Kingdom is sovereign. Parliament is made up of the elected House of Commons, the appointed House of Lords, and the Crown, as personified by the monarch. The main business of Parliament takes place in the two houses, but royal assent is required for a bill to become an Act of Parliament, or statute law. As a result of parliamentary sovereignty, the British Constitution is uncodified, consisting mostly of disparate written sources, including parliamentary statutes, judge-made case law, and international treaties, together with constitutional conventions. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court recognizes a number of principles underlying the British Constitution, such as parliamentary sovereignty, the rule of law, democracy, and upholding international law. King Charles III is the monarch and head of state of the UK and 14 other independent sovereign states, referred to as Commonwealth realms. The monarch is formally vested with all executive authority as the personal embodiment of the crown and is fundamental to the law and working of government in the UK. The disposition of such powers, however, including those belonging to the royal prerogative, is generally exercised only on the advice of ministers of the Crown responsible to Parliament and thence to the electorate. Nevertheless, in the performance of official duties, the monarch has the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. In addition, the monarch has a number of reserve powers at his disposal to uphold responsible government and prevent constitutional crises. For general elections, elections to the House of Commons, the UK is divided into 650 constituencies, each of which is represented by one Member of Parliament, MP, elected by the first-past-the-post system. MPs hold office for up to 5 years and must then stand for re-election if they wish to continue to be an MP. The Conservative Party, colloquially known as the Tory Party or the Tories, and the Labour Party have been the dominant political parties in the country since the 1920s, leading to the UK being described as a two-party system. However, since the 1920s, other political parties have won seats in the House of Commons, although never more than the Conservatives or Labour. The Prime Minister is the head of government in the UK. Acting under the direction and supervision of a cabinet of senior ministers, selected and led by the Prime Minister, His Majesty's government serves as the principal instrument for public policy making, administers public services, and through the Privy Council, promulgates statutory instruments and tenders advice to the monarch. Nearly all Prime Ministers have served concurrently as First Lord of the Treasury, and all Prime Ministers have continuously served as First Lord of the Treasury since 1905, Minister for the Civil Service since 1968, and Minister for the Union since 2019. While appointed by the monarch, in modern times the Prime Minister is, by convention, an MP, the leader of the political party with the most seats in the House of Commons, and holds office by virtue of their ability to command the confidence of the House of Commons. The Prime Minister, as of 5th of July 2024, is Sir Keir Starmer. Although not part of the United Kingdom, the three Crown dependencies of Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man, as well as the 14 British overseas territories, are subject to the sovereignty of the British Crown. Administrative divisions. The geographical division of the United Kingdom into counties or shires began in England and Scotland in the early Middle Ages, and was completed throughout Great Britain and Ireland by the early modern period. Modern local government by elected councils, partly based on the ancient counties, was established by separate Acts of Parliament, in England and Wales in 1888, Scotland in 1889, and Ireland in 1898,
meaning there is no consistent system of administrative or geographic demarcation across the UK. And England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland each have their own distinct jurisdictions. Until the 19th century, there was little change to those arrangements, but there has since been a constant evolution of role and function. Local government in England is complex, with the distribution of functions varying according to local arrangements. The upper-tier subdivisions of England are the 9 regions, used primarily for statistical purposes. One of the regions, Greater London, has had a directly elected assembly and mayor since 2000, following popular support for the proposal in a 1998 referendum. Local government in Scotland is divided into 32 council areas, with a wide variation in size and population. The cities of Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, and Dundee are separate council areas, as is the Highland Council, which includes a third of Scotland's area but only just over 200,000 people. Local councils are made up of elected councillors, of whom there are 1,223. Local government in Wales consists of 22 unitary authorities, each led by a leader and cabinet elected by the council itself. These include the cities of Cardiff, Swansea, and Newport, which are unitary authorities in their own right. Elections are held every 4 years under the first-past-the-post system. Local government in Northern Ireland since 1973 has been organized into 26 district councils, each elected by single transferable vote. Their powers are limited to services such as waste collection, dog control, and maintaining parks and cemeteries. In 2008, the executive agreed on proposals to create 11 new councils to replace the existing system. Devolution. In the United Kingdom, a process of devolution has transferred various powers from the UK government to 3 of the 4 UK countries, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, as well as to the regions of England, which since 1999 have their own governments and parliaments which control various devolved matters. These powers vary and have been moved to the Scottish Government, the Welsh Government, the Northern Ireland Executive, and in England, the Greater London Authority and combined authorities. Amongst the devolved parliaments across the UK, the Scottish Parliament has the most extensive responsibilities for devolved powers and has been described as one of the most powerful devolved parliaments in the world. The UK has an uncodified constitution, and constitutional matters are not amongst the powers that have been devolved. Under the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty, the UK Parliament could, in theory, therefore, abolish the Scottish Parliament, Senedd, or Northern Ireland Assembly. Though in the Scotland Act of 2016 and the Wales Act of 2017, it states that the Scottish Government and the Welsh Government are a permanent part of the UK's constitutional arrangements. In practice, it would be politically difficult for the UK Parliament to abolish devolution to the Scottish Parliament and the Senedd because these institutions were created by referendums. The political constraints placed upon the UK Parliament's power to interfere with devolution in Northern Ireland are greater still, because devolution in Northern Ireland rests upon an international agreement with the Government of Ireland. The UK Parliament restricts the 3 devolved parliaments' legislative powers in economic policy matters through an act passed in 2020. England. Unlike Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, England does not have a separate devolved government or national parliament. Rather, a process of devolution of powers from the central government to local authorities has taken place first in 1998. The Greater London Authority, GLA, was set up following a referendum in 1998. Colloquially known as City Hall, it is the devolved regional government body for Greater London. It consists of 2 political branches,
an executive mayor, and the London Assembly, which serves as a check and balance on the mayor. A combined authority, CA, is a type of local government institution introduced in England outside Greater London by the Local Democracy, Economic Development and Construction Act 2009. CAs allow a group of local authorities to pool appropriate responsibility and receive certain devolved functions from central government in order to deliver transport and economic policy more effectively over a wider area. A combined county authority, CCA, is a similar type of local government institution introduced in England outside Greater London by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, but may only be formed by upper-tier authorities, county councils, and unitary authorities.
Topography. England accounts for 53% of the UK, covering 50,350 square miles, or 130,395 kilometers squared. Most of the country consists of lowland terrain, with upland and mountainous terrain northwest of the Tees X line, which roughly divides the UK into lowland and upland areas. Lowland areas include Cornwall, the New Forest, the South Downs, and the Norfolk Broads. Upland areas include the Lake District, the Pennines, the Yorkshire Dales, Exmoor, and Dartmoor. The main rivers and estuaries are the Thames, Severn, and the Humber. Scotland accounts for 32% of the UK, covering 30,410 square miles, or 78,772 kilometers squared. This includes nearly 800 islands, notably the Hebrides, Orkney Islands, and Shetland Islands. Scotland is the most mountainous constituent country of the UK. The Highlands to the north and west are the more rugged region containing the majority of Scotland's mountainous land, including the Cairngorms, Loch Lomond, and the Trossachs and Ben Nevis, which, at 1,345 meters, or 4,413 feet, is the highest point in the British Isles. Wales accounts for less than 9% of the UK, covering 8,020 square miles, or 20,779 kilometers squared. It is mostly mountainous, though South Wales is less mountainous than North and Mid Wales. The highest mountains in Wales are in Snowdonia and include Snowdon, Welsh Wyddfa, which at 1,085 meters, or 3,560 feet, is the highest peak in Wales. Wales has over 1,680 miles, or 2,704 kilometers of coastline, including the Pembrokeshire coast. Several islands lie off the Welsh mainland, the largest of which is Anglesey, Ynys Môn. Northern Ireland, separated from Great Britain by the Irish Sea and North Channel, has an area of 5,470 square miles, or 14,160 kilometers squared, and is mostly hilly. It includes Lough Neagh, which at 150 square miles, or 388 kilometers squared, is the largest lake in the British Isles by area. Lough Erne, which has over 150 islands, and the Giant's Causeway, which is listed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. The highest peak in Northern Ireland is Slieve Donard in the Mourne Mountains at 852 meters, or 2,795 feet. Politics. The UK is a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy operating under the Westminster system, otherwise known as a democratic parliamentary monarchy. It is a centralized, unitary state wherein the Parliament of the United Kingdom is sovereign. Parliament is made up of the elected House of Commons, the appointed House of Lords, and the Crown, as personified by the monarch. The main business of Parliament takes place in the two houses, but royal assent is required for a bill to become an Act of Parliament, or statute law. As a result of parliamentary sovereignty, the British Constitution is uncodified, consisting mostly of disparate written sources, including parliamentary statutes, judge-made case law, and international treaties, together with constitutional conventions. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court recognizes a number of principles underlying the British Constitution, such as parliamentary sovereignty, the rule of law, democracy, and upholding international law. King Charles III is the monarch and head of state of the UK and 14 other independent sovereign states, referred to as Commonwealth realms. The monarch is formally vested with all executive authority as the personal embodiment of the crown and is fundamental to the law and working of government in the UK. The disposition of such powers, however, including those belonging to the royal prerogative, is generally exercised only on the advice of ministers of the Crown responsible to Parliament and thence to the electorate. Nevertheless, in the performance of official duties, the monarch has the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. In addition, the monarch has a number of reserve powers at his disposal to uphold responsible government and prevent constitutional crises. For general elections, elections to the House of Commons, the UK is divided into 650 constituencies, each of which is represented by one Member of Parliament, MP, elected by the first-past-the-post system. MPs hold office for up to 5 years and must then stand for re-election if they wish to continue to be an MP. The Conservative Party, colloquially known as the Tory Party or the Tories, and the Labour Party have been the dominant political parties in the country since the 1920s, leading to the UK being described as a two-party system. However, since the 1920s, other political parties have won seats in the House of Commons, although never more than the Conservatives or Labour. The Prime Minister is the head of government in the UK. Acting under the direction and supervision of a cabinet of senior ministers, selected and led by the Prime Minister, His Majesty's government serves as the principal instrument for public policy making, administers public services, and through the Privy Council, promulgates statutory instruments and tenders advice to the monarch. Nearly all Prime Ministers have served concurrently as First Lord of the Treasury, and all Prime Ministers have continuously served as First Lord of the Treasury since 1905, Minister for the Civil Service since 1968, and Minister for the Union since 2019. While appointed by the monarch, in modern times the Prime Minister is, by convention, an MP, the leader of the political party with the most seats in the House of Commons, and holds office by virtue of their ability to command the confidence of the House of Commons. The Prime Minister, as of 5th of July 2024, is Sir Keir Starmer. Although not part of the United Kingdom, the three Crown dependencies of Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man, as well as the 14 British overseas territories, are subject to the sovereignty of the British Crown.
The British Armed Forces consist of 3 professional service branches: the Royal Navy and Royal Marines, forming the Naval Service, the British Army, and the Royal Air Force. The armed forces of the United Kingdom are managed by the Ministry of Defence and controlled by the Defence Council, chaired by the Secretary of State for Defence. The Commander-in-Chief is the British monarch, to whom members of the forces swear an oath of allegiance. The armed forces are charged with protecting the UK and its overseas territories, promoting the UK's global security interests, and supporting international peacekeeping efforts. They are active and regular participants in NATO, including the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps, the Five-Power Defence Arrangements, RIMPAC, and other worldwide coalition operations. Overseas garrisons and facilities are maintained in Ascension Island, Bahrain, Belize, Brunei, Canada, Cyprus, Diego Garcia, the Falkland Islands, Germany, Gibraltar, Kenya, Oman, Qatar, and Singapore. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the UK had the world's 6th or 5th highest military expenditures in 2024. Total defence spending in 2024 was estimated at 2.3% of gross domestic product. Following the end of the Cold War, defence policy has a stated assumption that the most demanding operations will be undertaken as part of a coalition. Economy. The UK has a highly developed social market economy. With an estimated nominal GDP of £2.765 trillion in 2024, it is the 6th largest national economy in the world and the 2nd largest in Europe. Its currency, the pound sterling, is the 4th most traded currency in the foreign exchange market and the world's 4th largest reserve currency after the United States dollar, the euro, and the yen.
The pound sterling maintains its high nominal value through both its long history of stability and by never undergoing formal redenomination. Since 2022, the UK has been both the world's fourth largest exporter of goods and services and fourth largest importer of goods and services. Despite having one of the highest levels of income inequality in the OECD, the UK has a very high HDI ranking, even when adjusted for inequality. As of 2025, the UK unemployment rate is 4.7%, which is moderately low by European standards. HM Treasury, led by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is responsible for developing and executing the government's public finance and economic policy. The Department for Business and Trade is responsible for business, international trade and enterprise. The Bank of England is the UK's central bank and responsible for issuing notes and coins in the pound sterling. Banks in Scotland and Northern Ireland retain the right to issue their own notes, subject to retaining enough Bank of England notes in reserve to cover their issue. The Bank of England is exploring a digital pound to enable instant settlement and improve payment infrastructure. Industries and services. The service sector made up around 80% of the UK's GVA in 2023. As of 2023, it is the world's second-largest exporter of services and in 2024 was the world's largest net exporter of financial services. In 2023, the UK was 13% above its pre-pandemic and pre-Brexit peak in 2019 for service exports. London is the world capital for foreign exchange trading, with a market share of 38.1% in 2022 of the daily US $7.5 trillion global turnover. It is the largest urban economy in Europe and, alongside New York, the city in the world most integrated with the global economy. London is also one of the world's leading financial centers, ranking second in the 2025 Global Financial Centers Index. Edinburgh, the UK's second-largest financial centre, ranks 29th in the world in the same index. The UK's manufacturing sector in 2024 was the world's 10th largest and Europe's 4th largest by value output. Due to a period of high domestic inflation caused by COVID-19, high energy prices and supply chain shocks, the UK imported and exported less goods in 2023 than in 2018. At the end of 2024, manufacturing in the United Kingdom accounted for 8% of the workforce and 8.6% of national economic output. As reported in 2017, the East Midlands and West Midlands, at 12.6% and 11.8% respectively, were the regions with the highest proportion of employees in manufacturing. London's manufacturing sector had the lowest at 2.8%. The country's tourism sector is very important to the British economy. London was named Europe's most popular destination for 2022. The creative industries accounted for 5.9% of the UK's GVA in 2019, having grown by 43.6% in real terms from 2010. Creative industries contributed more than £111 billion to the UK economy in 2018, and the sector grew more than 5 times faster than the UK economy overall in that year. Lloyd's of London, located in London, is the world's largest insurance and reinsurance market. WPP plc is one of the world's biggest advertising companies and also based in London. The UK is one of the leading retail markets in Europe and Europe's largest e-commerce market. With consumption expenditures of over $2 trillion in 2023, it has the second largest consumer market in Europe. John Lewis is the UK's largest employee-owned business. The British automotive industry generates £47 billion of exports, 12% of the UK's total exports of goods. In 2024, the UK produced 779,584 passenger vehicles and 125,649 commercial vehicles. 8 out of 10 cars produced in the UK are exported overseas. Britain is known for iconic cars like Mini and Jaguar, as well as luxury cars such as Rolls-Royce, Bentley and Range Rover. The UK is a major centre for engine manufacturing, with 1.59 million engines produced in 2024.
It was the world's third-largest exporter of engines in 2023. The UK motorsport industry employs more than 40,000 people, comprises around 4,300 companies, and has an annual turnover of around £10 billion. 7 of the 10 Formula One teams are based in the UK, with their technology being used in supercars and hypercars from McLaren, Aston Martin, and Lotus. In 2024, the UK surpassed Germany to become the largest market for electric vehicles in Europe.
The aerospace industry of the UK is the second largest in the world and has an annual turnover of around £30 billion. The UK space industry was worth £17.5 billion in 2020-21 and employed around 48,800 people. Since 2012, the number of space organizations has grown on average nearly 21% per year, with 1,293 organizations reported in 2021. The UK Space Agency has stated in 2023 that it is investing £1.6 billion in space-related projects. The British agriculture industry is intensive, highly mechanized, and efficient by European standards, producing approximately 60% of the country's overall food requirements and 73% of its indigenous food needs, utilizing around 0.9% of the labor force, 292,000 workers. Around two-thirds of production is devoted to livestock and one-third to arable crops. The UK retains a significant, though much reduced, fishing industry, with at least 49% of UK fish sustainably caught in 2020. The UK marine natural capital assets were estimated to have a value of £211 billion in 2021. It is rich in a variety of other natural resources, including coal, petroleum, natural gas, tin, limestone, iron ore, salt, clay, chalk, gypsum, lead, and silica, and has an abundance of arable land. Science and technology. England and Scotland were leading centers of the scientific revolution from the 17th century. The United Kingdom led the Industrial Revolution from the 18th century and has continued to produce scientists and engineers credited with important advances. Major theorists from the 17th and 18th centuries include Isaac Newton, whose laws of motion and illumination of gravity have been seen as a keystone of modern science. From the 19th century, Charles Darwin, whose theory of evolution by natural selection was fundamental to the development of modern biology, and James Clerk Maxwell, who formulated classical electromagnetic theory, and more recently, Stephen Hawking, who advanced major theories in the fields of cosmology, quantum gravity, and the investigation of black holes. The Department for Science, Innovation, and Technology is responsible for helping to develop and manage the UK's scientific, research, and technological outputs. Scientific research and development remains important in British universities, with many establishing science parks to facilitate production and cooperation with industry. During 2022, the UK produced 6.3% of the world's scientific research papers and had a 10.5% share of scientific citations, the third highest in the world for both. The UK ranked first in the world for field-weighted citation impact. Scientific journals produced in the UK include publications by the Royal Society, Nature, the British Medical Journal, and The Lancet. By 2024, the UK tech sector reached a value of $1.2 trillion, surpassing the combined values of the French and German sectors. Cambridge was named the #1 university in the world for producing successful technology founders. The UK's artificial intelligence industry is the largest in Europe by value, and the country ranked third globally in a 2024 report on artificial intelligence development by Stanford University. In 2025, the UK ranked 6th in the Global Innovation Index. The Tech Prosperity Deal was announced in 2025, where U.S. companies pledged £150 billion of investment in the UK. Transport coming soon. Next part. Everyone subscribe and bell icon.